Right. Thanks team for being here. Tony, Joe, we'll hand over to you. This is our first of what will be a number of updates on local water done well. Today is an information sharing. I know there'll be lots of questions, but as we talked about this morning, if we can hold them so we can get through this. If there's time at the end, we might be able to have questions because we're starting early. So let's just get the information shared. Note your questions down because they will be important and we do need to get answers for you. But over to you guys. Thank you.
Hello, Tato. Yeah, thanks for having us today. It's been a while since we last put up on the local water. I think November we had a workshop and December we approved the bids agreement. So unfortunately the water reform stuff didn't slow down over the Christmas break. It's kept going somewhat at pace. So there is a bit to catch you up on. So that's what we're going to endeavour to do in this session. Just to remind you, I guess what's changed since we last met, just go through the timeline again so you understand where we're up to and what's required of you in the next steps. Kind of looking at the options and where we've gotten to with that, giving you an update of where we're currently standing, and then just kind of outline the next steps and what we need to do from here. Pretty much it.
No, just really, I guess, reiterating what Joe's saying is that there's an awful lot of information we're going to be going backwards a little bit, like I this morning. We're going to go back before we go forward. So it's just really covering off what we previously explained. And it's been a little while between drinks, due to fun, yeah, like I said, we can leave questions to the end. That'll be appreciated. Certainly not going to go into any massive detail because we really want to be able to almost frame up the next workshop that we'll be having that. I can put a couple of on that slide as well.
Yeah, I think that's it. Kind of give the 10,000 foot view and then we can zoom in as we need more detail and we unearth things that need more understanding.
Make it sound like we're jumping out of a plane.
I don't make any wood puns, I don't know.
Well, there's not enough narratives.
So just to recap, what are we doing and why? So the legislation requires us to have our water service delivery plan to the minister by the 3rd of September. In reality, we're aiming to have that sort of agreed and dusted by June, July, just because of the elections and all of that good stuff. So we have to show how water services will be financially sustainable by 2028. And the government has given us 5 potential options that we can use to deliver those water services. It's not the status quo, and I'll go on to that in a bit more detail in the next slides, but there definitely has been, for the legislation, it's becoming more clear about what we need to do to, the bar's getting raised about what's going to be required into the future. DIA will definitely be monitoring our plan to make sure that we do what we say we're going to do. And as part of the process, we have to consult on a minimum of 2 options. So that's our existing model and an alternative. So that's just the recap. Hopefully everyone remembers what we're doing.
And I think, and certainly a lot more information has come out from central government since we last spoke. So we'll make sure that we cover off that today. With DIA, we're going to talk about the Commerce Commission, talk about Tūrangi, and we know a lot more about what the requirements will be for us. So therefore, we've got to make sure we're responding to that, but then our water services to that.
So in December, Bill 3 came out. That was quite a beast, 300 pages of quite technical information. So we spent a bit of time understanding what those implications are, and there's a couple of slides that I'll just kind of talk you through what that means for councils. Waikato Water has been ongoing. Julie's been actively participating, Councillor Taylor as well, actively involved in some of those conversations. In the end, 7 councils signed up the heads of agreement. So those conversations are ongoing. I had put a note here to give an update on Waikato now, but we can come back to it. Yeah, we can come back to it a little bit later. We did touch base with DAA just to kind of talk to them about where we were up to in our plan. So we did get some direction from them, which has fed into our thinking. And we're taking that on board. Likely we will reach out to them again as we get a little further down the path and just keep in touch that where our plan is heading.
That's because they have to sign off our
Yeah.
service delivery plan before it goes to the minister. So
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely right, Chris. Yeah, I mean, that's certainly something that we want to align ourselves with their requirements. We don't want to be going off on up down left field and suddenly realise that we get to September and the IA will go, well, that's not what we expected. So we are working closely with them.
We're just doing some community education comms, which have started to appear just to educate the public a little bit about what we do with water services, what it means, and just what the water reform is about. Not getting into too much detail about exactly what the preferred option will be at this point, but just to kind of do some education. Want to add anything, Kevin? Or?
as the star of the show.
Did a great job. And quite a bit of work has been happening just with the options assessment, which we'll talk through a little bit, and the financials being a key part of that. This is just a high level roadmap I've put together for what, I don't know if you guys can see that, maybe, but just what if we remain as we are, or some version of, there's still changes we'll have to make. So I guess just wanting to draw your attention, the legislation, which was Bill 3, made it pretty clear what's going to be different under local water done well, and sort of gave a indicative roadmap of when those changes will start to take effect. So obviously at the moment we're in the water service delivery plan phase, which sort of is actually stage 1, phase 1. So at the moment we're figuring out what we're going to do and how we might go about it. But once we've done that, then we need to get into the execution mode of how we're going to actually implement those changes. And I guess just pointing out the most important pieces, things will start to take effect from this year is about getting through this decision, which is a big one. Then we'll start moving into planning how we're going to implement it and beginning to execute it from 2027. We'll need to have financial separation a lot more so than what we have now, and planning functions will be separate as well. So water services will be sitting in its own strategy outside of the long-term plan as we know it at the moment. So how that exactly looks, we don't know yet, but just to kind of, this is still work that needs to all be done.
I know we've been asked not to ask questions, but last training we was prevented from making decisions from a certain point forward. Has that been considered in the plan?
Yeah, it has, absolutely, Chair. I mean, certainly we're very aware that whilst the deadline is September, we know obviously we have multiple elections and that we've got that kind of period of time there where we can't come around. So that's why we're indicating around that June, July time to get a decision from councillors. And that's our plan at the moment.
Big consultations.
So it's a convention that no major decisions are made in the 2 months leading up to an election that are likely to have an impact on the next significant impact on the next council. So that's the reason for bringing the date forward.
I just wanted to make sure those dates are being considered.
Yeah.
Yes, it has compressed our timeline, as I'll see in the next slide, but it does mean we're having to sort of slide in a quite exuberant state.
Okay. And again, just we have mentioned previously around the fact that if you recall, when we submitted, we did ask for 2 years in order to complete a water service delivery plan. That wasn't successful, so therefore we needed 12 months. And actually the 12 months isn't 12 months. And again, I'm just going to reiterate, for want of better word, we're having this done to us, that the timeframes aren't ours. So we have to make it fit as best we can. And that's a challenge for us, which obviously we're touching on as we're having this workshop around the fact that we have to do quite a bit of thinking. We have to go out to our communities and consult on something. And that's the space we're in.
Yeah, so just, yeah, at a high level, the financial separations will be more than it is now, so possibly separate bank accounts to that kind of level. Likelihood of having a separate water bill at some point in the future, aside from the charging mechanisms, that might still need to be, that's yet to be determined. As I mentioned, it'll be separate to the LTP, annual plan, annual report processes. There's other changes coming in the 3 water spaces, the operational space itself, including stormwater risk management plan will be required and a drinking water catchment plan. So those are new requirements. The economic regulation will obviously have quite a big impact. So similar to the electricity utilities, the oversight will be quite similar. So it'll be an information disclosure regime, which will obviously take, resource to comply with. It'll be having to disclose all these different metrics about our service so that we can be monitored.
So I guess in essence, what that's describing is that there's a lot more work to do. And in order for that work to be done, there needs to be positions and people in their role in order to do it. When we have that ring fencing or separation of the water services, obviously there'll be people who are willing to be able to, have that financial acumen, who have to work with the Commerce Commission or the BIA, and then there's a lot more requirements around that compliance space.
Yeah, and this is all new since last time we met because the bill has come out. So effectively the cost and the bar has raised through this bill.
Yeah, so the standing still position is now at least 500K.
500 to 800.
500 to 800, yeah. And part of that is also the levy that we will have to pay to the. That's right.
And still a high degree of uncertainty about how this will work in practice too.
Correct.
So we know a lot more, which is why we're trying to bring you up to speed and not delving in too deep. But obviously we've got our own timeline that we have to work towards as well in order to satisfy that September deadline. That's not going to change. And we're hopeful that we'll get a sign off or at least an indication by December this year on the water section that we can.
I think it's planned that they'll be approved and then we would need to publish them by around December.
Into the new training.
Yeah.
Sorry, you expect a decision from us 2 months before the election?
No,
at
Right,
least.
hang on, we just
Sorry.
covered that. I just said before, there is an agreed moratorium on major decisions at least a couple of months out, so we won't be doing that.
So what decisions are expected from us?
So
Nothing today,
Not
this is
today.
information sharing, so if we can let the team just carry on.
Well, no, just to finish that question, what decision is expected by us? At least, what's the biggest decision? What's the last decision expected from us in this triennium?
Timeline up there.
where the
Right, so
chair
they
got the
time-
timeline, she will need to know. Information.
Right, May, June, right, okay.
Yeah, so this was the plan as we presented it at the last workshop, what we were planning to work through, just understanding what our options were and starting to compare them, assess and evaluate the different options against each other. That's work that has taken place. Still some work to be done, especially in the financial space, but mostly we have a decent picture of our possible options. So where we're up to now is bringing you up to speed on what those options look like, understanding your perspective about what direction we should be getting in, and preparing for the legislatively required public consultation on those options. Then after that, I've got a more detailed timeline for submission. So this is the workshop now. We likely will put in a second workshop. I think it's the 11th of March, just to maybe get into the detail a bit more, and you would have had time to process some of this information. We can talk details. We're hoping at the 25th of March council meeting to make a decision on what our preferred option is for public consultation. That will take place immediately after that meeting through April. May we will have the submission hearing, do the work to finalise what our water service delivery plan looks like, and aiming for approval in June. So there's not much wiggle room in that, and there's some meaty decisions to be made, but that's what we're working with.
Can I just clarify the 25th of March proposed option, so that the assumption is that, to the public anyway, we suggest this, we're supposed to give options. How do you word that?
Yeah, we're going to be covering off what the options are, but we will go out to the public with options.
So just to reiterate, the questions you're asking are going to be answered. If we give the staff a chance, all this will come out in the presentation.
One thing I would say is that, yeah, generally we do give a proposed or preferred option, and we would be following, we intend to follow that protocol, and that is what's specified in the legislation. Any questions on the timeline? Or we'll come back to it. I think we did no questions on it. Okay. Thanks for accommodating.
Joe, just to clarify, we're consulting, not using the Local Government Act, aren't we? So it is a slightly different process. So when you think that we're doing something different, it is because we're consulting under the, I can't remember the name of the bill.
The Local Government Water Services Preliminary Arrangement. So
Thank you.
Rolls off the tongue, doesn't it?
Yep.
Yes, the only main difference is that you only have to decide on 2 options, not all practical options. So, however, at this point, we've still really got 3 options, main options on the table. So, so we have, from the work we've been doing, just to kind of reiterate that we, Taupō, are in a reasonable position. We can show that we can meet the financial investment revenue sufficiency measures that were put out as part of the template. Debt capacity is not really our concern, as it's not a driver for us that it is for some other councils. We have a plan for our ongoing investment, as you're all very aware. We've been through the LTP. So therefore, that's kind of made it clear to us that any alternative really needs to show that it's going to be better for Taupō. So that's kind of what we've been taking in mind as we've worked through the options. Obviously, it had to meet the criteria as well, the government criteria. Yeah. So we've gone through a long list of options and then kind of shortlisted. And that's what we can talk to a bit more. Just wondering if it's worth pausing there. That's kind of on the process, the timeline, what we need to do stage. From there, we're just going to give a bit more update on what the options are, a little bit more detail on what's been happening in Waikato. So if there's any questions about the process, if they're short, that would be fine now to chime in.
What I would just with the chair is just again, reiterate the fact that we are quite unique. We believe we are with the points we've just gone through around, the investments we've made, our financial situation, and not that we're comparing with other councils, but we have a different proposition than other councils. Some councils might be, well, they are in different situations. So that's kind of moulded what we're going to be presenting around what those options are for the future of water services.
Yeah.
Sorry, to clarify one thing, and just going back to before you made the point about the share being around 500 to 800K, this is all dependent on the Waikato Waters was 10 councils, but now it's at 7. So the actual cost that we talked about last time was around 200, I think, wasn't it? So if you're all freaking out about the cost, it's because the pool, or the number of people that it's been spread over shrunk.
It's also because the standards have changed.
Yes.
And the scope
Yeah.
of work.
Scope of working standards
And the
have moved
cost
up
living.
and out,
Yeah.
and hence the cost has increased accordingly.
Yeah, just if anyone was freaking out about that,
Yeah.
that's all.
If there's no questions on process, it would be helpful to go through the long list of options and how we've dealt with those or considered them. And we were sitting with, what our recommendation, certainly in the steering group today of the best.
Yeah.
I'll just ask a question. So I don't disagree with your statement around where we sit today with different services and what we've got within our community. At what point have you modelled out? So in 10 years, are we still looking good sitting by ourselves? In 20 years, are we sitting? And I can pause that if it's coming up.
Yeah, no, through the chair. I mean, that's the level of detail we really want to get to in the future, but absolutely we have.
That's fine.
There's financial modelling that's been done. And obviously we're taking, very, very cognizant of where we are currently and then what may well happen in the future, which is why obviously when we've had previous workshops with you, we said, hey, recommending we sign a HITIP agreement with what's happening in the Waikato with those councils. And whilst my work that you remember I've described as, hey, we're still on the bus, we're still there, we're participating, and that's something that we're still doing. Keeping our, and I think it's almost as if I'm wording it, I'm not sure the word is right, but that eye on pride, which might be down the track. So we will touch on that as well.
Yeah, I think that there is a slide available which shows exactly what you've asked around how much it's going to cost additional and when the cost savings kick in and what the timeline or the lag is for that, yeah.
And I think that's a level of detail that we obviously want to get to you. That's not really, we're not going to go there today because we're really very aware that we've had a steering group who have been very much entrenched in this and living in breathing in, whereas we wanted to make sure that we're bringing everybody else along, and that's really the purpose of this workshop today, to go, hey, let's just recap. Here's what's changed, and here's our list of options for consultation.
If you can't also guarantee the political will at the highest level as well. So, future.
Yeah.
And just to add, the water services delivery plan has to cover a 10-year period too.
Correct.
Including the year that's just gone. But anyway,
Through the chair, just before you get onto the options, I mean, I for one am interested, there's a steering group behind the scenes looking at all this. I for one am interested in the qualifications and experience of the people in that steering group, because they're the ones making the recommendations. I'm not a water engineer.
So if I may,
Okay.
actually, council approved the membership of the steering group through your engagement report last year, so you've had that debate.
I don't believe I've requested some information about the experience and qualifications. I'm not being allowed to get that information.
So,
Rightly so,
Okay.
we get one.
so hang on a sec, let's just pause for a second. Your question is not about this. Your question is about appointments and HR. And if you're going to go down that track, I'd need you to outline what your skills, knowledge and experience is in appointment and selection.
Well, I'm not experienced in this.
Good.
That's why I'm
So,
asking.
okay, thank you.
That's why the
So
question-
park it, let's move on.
And just through the chair, we as governance have one employee, and that's the CEO, correct?
And I've requested to see some information about qualifications and experience of a staff member, and I have not been able to get that, so I see that as a
Nor
lot
should
of
you.
governance.
And that is none of our business as governance. We have one employee.
I disagree. I
Well,
think
you
it is
disagree,
absolutely
but you're
the
wrong,
business
so
of
we're going to
government.
move on.
to know.
I'm going to ask you to be quiet and we're going to move on.
Go for it.
So just for the chair on that topic, but slightly side issue. One of the aspects of the steering group going for this is we involved WSP to actually provide us a bit of independent review of the content of our water service delivery plan and kind of where we're heading. So just to provide some confidence around the table here that we're not just simply going out on a limb, we are getting some external sound. Yes, thank you.
And working with the DAA to ensure they've got some oversight about plans as well. I just also, Councillor Leonard, just to your question about just considering that, there's definitely we feel, at the moment we're good, but there's definitely a long-term thing that needs to be considered, and that will come clear in the advantages and disadvantages that we need to work through. And also there's lots of other uncertainties, so it's not just operating in a vacuum, right? It's all what's the influence is going to be externally, what are other councils doing, what's the Commerce Commission going to expect, all those other factors. So, yeah, it's sort of given what we know now. You would like to see the long list?
I think that would be appropriate, so we know, what the steering group is going to consider.
So our current status quo is not an option, because it doesn't meet the requirements as set out particularly for the financial separation. So no matter what, we have to do something to put in more stringent rules between how we manage our finances. We're pretty good, like it's not like we're borrowing from Waters to pay for other stuff. But there is just a few more processes that will need to be modified. So that's kind of ignore that one or discount that one, I should say. Can't wait this time. Oh, that's why I'm turning around. So the yellow ones are basically what we are looking at as a short list. So in-house delivery with some improvements, a Taupō CCO. So that would be, we would be the sole shareholders of that council controlled organisation, and the multi-council CCO, which has been the Waikato water model. Other things that have kind of come up as suggestions or possibilities and different discussions. We just wanted to articulate those and kind of demonstrate why they haven't made the shortlist at this time. Not to say that, yeah. So working with other councils, it's primarily been that the Waikato has had the leadership, I would say, and we have had a natural affinity with the group. So that's not to say that there aren't other options, but that's where we've landed, just in the interest of time and needing to keep moving. The consumer-owned trust and mixed models have been discounted, given that it's been pretty much agreed across sector that they won't be able to borrow from LGFA, and therefore the borrowing costs will be significantly higher. So those options have not been explored better at this time, given to that assumption and the complexity that would be likely in there. Some other options that have been discussed have kind of been, given the complexity, are not being explored in detail at this time. The phased approach is still something that could be considered, whether there's a middle ground that we can walk between.
And obviously, we need to be able to demonstrate to the DIA that options have been looked at, so that they're not just simply going straight to a solution. We know we're going to get challenged on that, hence why there is a long list.
So to check, just so the phased approach would be, for example, in-house delivery, option 2 to start with, keeping options open to potentially go to the other 3, 4, 5. Yeah.
Working through this.
Can I just have a quick
Sorry.
the current process, this is all of the councils have agreed, all of these, or just us? Just us.
Total. Yeah.
Right. So they're having that same conversation that you're having now.
Correct.
Yeah. And there's mobile workshops that have been taking place, and like I said, just to reiterate, every council was in a different position.
Yeah.
So we can cover off now what some of those the 3 practical options we've been looking at, and give you some of the advantages and disadvantages of them. And we have touched on these previously, but not to this level.
I can just paint a high level picture with this one, just to kind of, these are the things that we were really wanting to ensure that whichever model we choose, it meets some key criteria. So just as you can see, there's advantages and disadvantages to both sides, which is really just what this is showing, and that's why it's making it to play out. But those are the factors that would be primarily using in our criteria assessment when we evaluate and consider.
Just ask around the level of risk. So while we might have the infrastructure, it's still the risk now with the reassessment of water standards and the likes and spills and things like that. So have considered within this criteria assessment the potential of risk and the number of water systems that we have within our community. Like, you know, you talk to some councils, they have one processing.
Yeah. Yeah.
For example, whereas we have you know, like I see the service, I see the infrastructure that we've got, but my concern is the risk of having these just to ourselves and the potential should something go wrong. We'll pray it doesn't, but if it does, has that been considered in this analysis?
So definitely part of that consideration has been around what we would need within our team structure to lift our game, if you like, to satisfy all those new requirements. So we know that there's we're going to require you know, some extra operators. We're going to require some extra people in the compliance space and the network team in order to be performing. Not that we're not performing at a certain level, but we know there's requirements within the new build 3 and previous builds in order to be operating at that level. So I guess we know we're not going to be, whilst we say the status quo is not in the conversation, but we recognise where we've got to create some new positions across the team to manage the risk and requirements that's coming from central government. And I guess that also comes back to our uniqueness. You know, we've got 11 wastewater treatment plants, we've got 17 water treatment plants, so we're quite different from a lot of the other councils within the Waikato in respect of where our infrastructure is and our distributed network that we've got. And I'm comfortable with where we are with what we've got in our long-term plan around investment as well.
I understand our community wants to keep 3 waters, but I don't know if our community understands the impact of keeping 3 waters. And a statement that was made to me by somebody introducing New Zealand was there are 5 million people with 72 entities all replicating the same service across the country. And I think that's when it smacked me in the face. That's pretty out the gate if you put it into an elevator pitch like that.
So that's probably a conversation for another day, but once this goes through and then you add to that RMA and Building Act consenting and district planning and so on and so on, then your guess is as good as mine as to where the future lies. But I don't think status quo nationally 5, 6 or so years from now is a viable option, but that's not the subject for today.
I think what I was just trying to emphasise is we've got our community wants, but then when you a very rational, take your emotion out of the perspective, it's a very different conversation. And
Yeah, I mean, I agree entirely, and I think it's a challenge that we've got is where we have a limited time frame in order to get a decision across the line. So we are ensuring that kind of all better on in some respects. So we're making sure that we want to do the right for our communities, short term, medium term, long term, but taking into account what the future may look like as well. And that's the difficulty we have.
First option.
It's a great point though, because that is two sides of the coin. It's great to keep local decision making and responsibility and say, but the flip side is you're responsible and you carry the risk. So that pretty much gets to the heart of which one will do both. Okay. I think we've captured that as one of the disadvantages of the in-house council, so the ongoing risk and the potential for underinvestment. Do you want me to speak to these? Or do you want to have a
I think it would be helpful, because I'm not sure everyone's been exposed to all these and the sort of detail we've got here.
Yep, so if we carry on as we are, we have a plan. and it's a pretty good plan, so, you know, that is good. We don't have to make any dramatic changes, it's a low cost implementation model. The immediate risk is probably on the lower side. We can bide our time and see what happens and be prepared to change course if we need to. Our vet position is pretty good. We have the local decision making, we have elected accountability for the leadership. What else? Infrastructure. Oh, at the whole of council, we can decide what are the priorities, so we can balance if we need to make investment and what is we can balance that against. Trade-offs in other areas, we keep ownership of the assets and we have some certainty as best we can. The disadvantages that we consider, we don't get the scale economy benefits over the long term, potentially more expensive and potentially higher risk over the longer term. We do still have some challenges with not keeping our workforce, but it's obviously when we have got single staff that are responsible for a big area, we need to make sure that we look after that, and that is an area of risk. Council focus and capacity is spread across many services, as you're all very aware. If we have to move to aggregation down the line, potentially the cost is going to be even higher at that future point. So kind of the
Sorry, aggregation with another council, don't you mean?
just the extra cost to start up a new entity, or maybe if we need to join an entity that's already established, we don't know what they'll charge us to join, for example.
There, you know, there'd be a lot of IT costs that those councils are incurring now that we would need to recognise, and there'd be a lot of debt capacity that would be taken up by the entity by the time we join it.
I don't think you can underestimate both the supply and workforce risks and the competition for resources. If there is a large collective entity operating within the same region and we're a small fish, it's going to be difficult if we go alone on this model to compete, and increasingly so.
Well, can I suggest though that, I mean, that is with respect still a speculative, that is still speculative. I mean,
Absolutely. All of this is speculative, yes, correct.
And if I may, just to add, you know, I really feel for our business teams. This has been years of uncertainty, and this is, you know, this is still the case. So I just want to just add a little nod to them that have been going with this for a very long time.
And another way to look at the in-house, we didn't talk about internally about the kind of future-proof, enhanced, EU type setup, and that we would look at putting in some governance in there as well. We haven't actually landed what that look like per se, but certainly we would have to have a form of accountability and governance within that in-house model to be able to demonstrate to the DIA that that the water service delivery operation and is actually got some oversight and some reporting lines in there. So that might be, you know, a water service committee or something.
You have to do that anyway with the regulator.
But we have to ensure that we've got separation and ring fencing of all of our financials. And what we've also mentioned earlier, you know, there wouldn't be LTP, it wouldn't be any plan, but we know at the moment it would be the water services will be all those things, but quite only water centric.
So that's in-house.
In-house.
Yeah. So an option is to establish a total owned CCO, so we would be the single council owning that entity. It's quite similar to the in-house model. Other than I would say there is the independent governance layer would exist, and the financial separation would be probably cleaner in some ways. But we would retain all of the benefits that we would still get under the in-house model, so the local knowledge and decision making, etc. Compared to the in-house model, it would be additional costs, so having to have separate probably at least CE and finance officer, board, those kinds of things. So it would be a slightly more expensive version. And the complexity will be a little bit more, but a lot of the disadvantages sort of are equivalent to the in-house. Just a couple of comments, I guess I put under neutral, but that CCO could access additional debt, but that's not really a driver for us at this point. Not a problem that we need to solve. And the size of this change would probably be manageable. This is an option if the DIA is not happy with an in-house model. This could be an alternative to that in-house, so just something to kind of bear in mind.
Yeah, and you're familiar with how CCOs operate. We've got a couple of our own, and you know that obviously that requires independent board, directors, chief executives, and those kind of things. So obviously there's a cost associated with that structure.
You're counting the airport. The airport's sort of like a pseudo CCO.
Yeah, I was thinking more on things like TTLT.
Yeah.
The third option obviously is the multi-owned council organisation, which is like a water model that we've been exploring as part of the agreement. So we have talked about the advantages, and that was a lot of what we talked about last year, the reasons why we thought it was advantageous to stay in the tent. Some of the benefits, economies of scale, being able to do streamline consent to procurement. Over time, the risk profile probably high at the beginning, establishment, but likely over time, the risk profile would be better in the sense that costs and risk would be shared across a larger pool of ratepayers. Projects would be prioritised across the region, depending on highest needs. You can take that either way as an advantage or disadvantage, but that is, yeah, how a regional model would work, obviously. Would allow council to focus on other priorities, so just removing that water services requirement. Likely would have some benefits for staff. Retention, like being able to attract talent from a large entity and have more career paths and stuff like that. Yeah, and just spreading the costs and being able to make investments in technology and those kinds of things on a wider scale is probably part of why we're looking at a larger entity. The disadvantages that we've talked about, so loss of direct control, so we'd still be a reasonably large shareholder in the Waikato model, and obviously have influence in that way. There's potentially reduced cost pressure, so if you end up with two bills being run by two different people, council and water's entity, then that would still need some management to make sure that the costs don't go up on both sides. We would be left with some stranded overhead costs at council, so that is something that needs to be considered and weighed up in our comparison. Obviously council would be smaller, so that would be, you know, different. We would be guaranteeing debt, so there's things to think about. And yeah, this, you know, these are the bits that still need to be worked through. The establishment costs, uncertainty, complexity. So just comments on that is that, yeah, there is obviously, you guys know, the government direction is trying to still move towards this state and encourage amalgamation where possible, so that pressure will remain. It's likely that although there is benefits in joining together, those benefits will take time to emerge. So it's not going to be an immediate saving, but it's going to be a period of time before we can start to see those benefits. So it's sort of, yeah, deciding the time frame.
So through the chair, can you give me an example of the stranded overhead cost? What would that be? Staff.
So you move, so waters, for example, is 30% of our business.
Yeah.
If you took 30% away, that's the overhead cost. So how many people in our teams, but let's just say comms, HR, the organisation.
The organisation's already structured with everybody in. When you remove it, then it has an impact. And look, and this model here, that the voting CCO, if you recall, when we talked about the water reforms previously, you know, this is not many miles away from the entity B, albeit with a slightly smaller scale. And, you know, obviously we talked previously around some of the pros and cons of that and the complexities associated with combining both teams.
Exactly the same.
So Ellen, John?
And, yeah, just through the chair, it also is also the shared burden of up to a 500% debt limit. So, I mean, that's huge if total ratepayers end up having to pay that. I mean, that's huge. It is massive. That's
Small, thanks, Chair. It's more around the separate conversation the other day, some telling lines and their disadvantages, you know, we're talking about future local government reform. For people with
Disadvantage would be loss of asset ownership.
Yeah. Oh, it is direct control, loss of
Is
direct
that
control.
what you mean?
Yeah.
I'd say put asset.
Those direct control.
it's the emotive
Even
language
though they
that's not
cost a lot
there.
to run, they're still an asset. And we've got it on the asset books when you go to borrow, you know, sure what happens when you have so little. Yeah, we have a bit of an effect there, but certainly people have got to understand that they're losing ownership of these things. If we go that far. Right?
Yeah, I'd say this one is highly dependent on who you're partnering up with, and are they drenched in debt and high needs? And you can't separate that from this part of the equation.
Oh, yeah, yes, got it, absolutely. That is a critical part of this.
The Waitomo, the Otronga, all those outfits will be needing us more than we need them.
There's lots of analogies. It's about who are my friends, who I understand fit with. And again, everybody's got different debt levels, everybody's got different investment levels. And we have to make the best decision for our communities.
But do we know the state of the situation? I mean, someone could argue that we haven't got water meters, we underestimated, we've got to put money into water meters, but do we know the situation with the other councils?
I've been other councils, we don't know all of it, but certainly just coming back to water meters, just to jump on that, what a part of the Commerce Commission in Bill 3 is moving towards moving away from a rate funded revenue stream as well.
So who will tell us to do that? The regulator or government?
I would say they're the same, the regulator, Commerce Commission. The two regulators now, Commerce Commission and Tomato.
So if you have a separate entity managing water on behalf of either us individually or a collection of councils, they need to have a mechanism to apportion costs. The most effective mechanism for apportioning cost is metering, it's volumetric charging. But it's, to me, it's an inevitability.
We consider it's likely under all models.
Yeah. So just on this, coming back to a question that Kylie asked before she left around the cost and the timeline. So this is the one that's going to cost our ratepayers a little bit more upfront, and the benefits accrue later on around the 10-year cycle. Yeah. Initially unpalatable, ultimately better off. But it takes a long lead in to that.
So just to clarify, in my mind, and we're listening, when you say separate payments, separated from rates, you mean the cost of water, wastewater, and stormwater will be based on how much water you use.
Well, I mean, for yeah, volumetric.
Yeah, but I mean that transfers to wastewater. That what you pay in your water bill, well, this is the future, what you pay in your water bill will be paying for water and wastewater and stormwater. That's
So if I jump in, so to use your own words, that is speculative, and we don't know around wastewater or stormwater, but certainly around freshwater coming in. volumetric charging. I'm not sure if there's any meter you can attach to the toilet pan that measures what goes out.
Oh, no, what I mean, but basically what goes out usually is related to what comes in.
So, I mean, there are metrics around that, and Auckland brings what you charge.
Largely speaking,
You
yes.
have to put it through the, or
Yeah.
they do the percentage, yeah.
Also, well, that's not confirmed or anything.
No, there's nothing about.
We haven't modeled that
Oh,
No,
charging or anything yet.
this is just aspirations from central government moving towards that down the track. Yeah.
Perhaps if I just speak to the work that's happening in Waikato, firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the work that is happening. There's a huge amount that is going on across all of the seven councils in this model. So the financial modelling that's being done, the work that's being done to look at the establishment of CCO for those councils that do wish to move to that, so there is a safe place for that decision to be made. So just, I can't underestimate the amount of work that's going in across the space. And I just kind of want to speak positively to that work, which is that at least giving councils the option to safely make that decision should they wish to go into the entity.
Just to follow what Julie just said, conversation I had with the mayor of Waipawa yesterday at the Mayoral Forum in Otaronga of the 7 councils in the Waikato Collective. All of the mayors are keenly aware of the amount of time being chewed up primarily by chief executives in meetings, but not the least of which by the likes of the team we've got in front of CSO Waters team are spending an enormous amount of time doing all of this work, which is actually not delivering the core services which we have around our water delivery at the moment. This is over and above BAU, the day job.
In terms of the decision we have to make, well, I guess I'm struggling with, not struggling in my mind, but what I think we need is, okay, I understand that the initial costs under this model are going to be higher than keeping it in-house or our own CTO. There's so much unknown past the point of, say, 5 to 10 years. How do we know that it's going to get those cost efficiencies in that time? We don't find ourselves at the beginning again with wasted or rate pays, well, not wasted, but we've spent all this money. What guarantees do we have? We can't give any guarantees that we will find those economies of scale as and when we think we will. But that troubles me a lot, that we're making a lot of assumptions over a really extended period of time over which we've got very little control.
And this was the amalgamation argument for Auckland, and it is blown up like a massive explosion of people, cost. It is huge compared to what they said it was going to be. It was going to be all these economies of scale, and it was going to be so great for Auckland. It's cost them a fortune and lost all their personal power. That's what's going to happen to us if we go with this, because water in Auckland was a nightmare. And if you're I was Albany, which was a big part of Auckland, nothing unless they decided you would get it. And I'm sorry, I'm really cynical. I'll never vote for this. I think we are doing to our people something absolutely appalling. And economies of scale is a joke, because I'm telling you now, I'll probably be in my grave when it's happening, but it'll happen. It'll explode, and it'll have so much power, we will regret this forever. So we can talk about it as being so nice and saving money and we'll all be fine. No, we won't. We won't be in the powerful position we're in now if we do this. It frightens me, and there's all these lovely arguments that sound so good. You watch what happens.
All right, so yes,
Sums it up.
well, that is a view. Let's not close our
Well,
minds.
it's an experienced view, so don't disregard it either. It sounds like you are.
Well, hang on. You've only had 3 options. There's another option to go.
It's discussion.
Because it's not.
That was your vote?
Oh, so Chair, that.
So hang on a sec. So we do have time now for questions. Duncan, we'll start with you and then we'll go around.
I suppose with numbers, I thought we were going to get some financials.
I think, sorry, I did mention this morning, we had our council catch up, unfortunately, I think you missed it. Where we did say that we're going to be breaking this down into, as I reiterated, this is to bring you up to speed where things are at, and then we'll do another workshop where we get a little bit more granular to show you some of those numbers and figures that have been punched. That's not the purpose of today. I think that would have been, with respect, a bit too much.
So the agenda today was high level, to give everyone a catch up on the discussion and the options that we've been looking at. The detail, and you're right, Christine, that the devil's in the detail around where we go from here. So that's why we've scheduled another workshop on this. Are there any other questions? Because we do have time.
No.
Well, that was a
It's a
conversation.
bit to
Carol, wasn't it?
digest as well.
Pardon?
It's a bit to digest as well.
Well, it is, and we're dealing with flip-flopping legislation as it is, so what's
Yeah.
to stop that from happening again, and then we're at square one all over again?
Exactly.
Because, so how do we push back on central government and say, have that some bipartisan agreement so that we don't have to do this all over again?
Yeah, and in health and in education.
Driving me out of the
So we
water.
worry about the 10-year project, timeline. Yeah, like this social government won't come in and say deprivation areas, you need a few mil for that. Water treatment, you need a few grand for that. Yeah. Yeah, sure, anyway, so, yeah.
It's over the
I-
unknowns, and we're expected to
I'm
make
gonna
these
show
decisions
you.
based on those.
You know, I think.
So can I just use an analogy here? If you reflect on our hearings and deliberations this morning on the future development strategy, a lot of that is determined upon relative unknowns.
Yeah.
So we are making some assumptions based on the best information about what is likely to happen in the future. There is no difference here to what we talked about this morning in terms of that. We are making assumptions and decisions based on the best information we can gather at any given point in time.
Well,
That's the business we're in. We don't know. And if you do know the future, I'm happy to hear the 6 numbers I need for next Saturday night, because I'll pick them.
I don't
We don't know.
think
So we just need-
anybody knows the future. You've got to look at past experience. If you look at health reforms, they're very recent. We're on our knees in terms of health. We are on our knees. I sat through the thing that showed us the first picture of it and I said, oh my God, this is going to be a disaster. And it's been a disaster, and fighting our way out of it, we're looking at billions and billions of dollars worth of debt. And do you know what? You've got no control over your health here at all, none whatsoever. Not doctors, not hospitals, not specialists, nothing. And you did have a few years ago. So be warned, it is not just one example, it's loads of examples. And no, you might not know the future, but you can look at the past and you can look at what's recently happened and you can say, they'll promise you the world, and it won't happen, and it's your jobs and it's your future and it's the payment for our people that live in this place that can't afford their rates now. So no, I'm sorry, there's not just one example. Don't know the future, we know the past, and it's a recent past in terms of health, which is in the worst state I've ever seen it in 50 years. So,
and to be fair, what we were discussing earlier today, we still have control over to review again in a year's time. We don't have the opportunity to keep reviewing what we're deciding here. Once it's done, the horse is bolted.
Following on from what these two Bill said, I look at the energy industry, and the energy industry is a very, very similar situation where we paid for the services that we had, we paid for the electricity. Our families reached into their pocket and they paid to get electricity to their farms and their homes. And some of us remember that actually happening. So today I have a town that struggles to pay their energy bill, who turns electricity off, who don't use electricity when they should be using it. And the reason for that is because it is user pays. Thank God they don't have that for water. They pay a flat rate for water and they can use their water whenever they want to. I too have been through the Auckland situation of water care and Mark Ford and everything that he was promising us and how it was going to happen, and we can see how it worked out. My daughter's in the UK. She pays Anglia Water something like £100 a month for her family to have water coming in. I'm totally opposed to anything. We keep it in-house, we keep it for the people who bought it, we keep it for the people who paid for it. If we are forced in the future to change, fine, we can't do anything about that. But we stick with what we've got, which is a fantastic system, paid for by the people of this district, looked after by a terrific staff, actually, who've done a fantastic job. In the 2 years that I've been here, that's the one thing that I've noticed more than any other single thing. Sorry, everybody else. The water, the water, how we look after the water, how we deliver the water, what do we do with the water, the stuff that no one sees. It just amazes me every day how we do it.
I've still got an open mind. I do want to see
Oh,
the
but it's
legislation come
like
out, but
convince me another way.
I'm just concerned about what we don't know and what we don't have control over, and then we're giving away even more control. So I've just got some
Okay,
concerns
so-
about some.
Through the chair,
Hang on, let me just jump in here. We're not making a decision today. This is not.
Hence the open mind. I just need to.
We've got sharing information, so we can get up to speed. So I encourage you all just to keep an open mind. I hear what you're saying about history is a really good indicator of where the future lies. But let's just keep an open mind. We still have to go out and consult on this. David.
Tastes pretty good to me. Bit more much chlorine at the moment, though.
Fluidity?
Yes.
Fluoride, yes.
So if nothing-
Sorry, no, I think you've summed it up pretty well, Mr. Chair. Yeah, we're going to talk to the people about it, but I think, you know, I do like it local, I do like it locally owned, I do go past the water treatment station, I know we're part owner, you know, we're all a shareholder of that. I think there's nothing wrong with forming a CCO or whatever, Taupō water. I think that makes sense. Especially with the new regulator, but yeah, I'll wait till I see what the people. But you've explained it very well today, and it's quite clear. Thank you.
Nothing.
Hang on, Dave. Hang on.
Yes.
Don't.
Yeah, the risk of sounding like a broken record, I mean, just reiterate, the Auckland experience, there were great promises and, well, I don't think it worked out, and I think it took 10 years for it to even settle down, actually, at least, and you could expect the same. There's risk in any option, but arguably, if we stick with what we've got, it's more the devil we know. Okay, there's uncertainties, but you go into a big, large organisation, something like that, and anything can happen. And it's not always, there will be some good aspects of it, there always is, but yeah, you know.
Right, so bearing in mind, this is only the first relatively high level, so there's more detail to come next workshop before we go out and consult with the community on what the options are. Joe, back to you.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, it would be helpful to know what you would like to know. Obviously, the financials is the key part. I can share the detail behind what we've shown today. That would be useful about how we've come up with the criteria and the advantages, disadvantages. If that helps.
Yeah, okay.
Long list of options, all that kind of thing.
What's the state of the other councils? How much can you actually get out of them? I mean,
What about the other councils?
what else are you going to park with them? What are their debt levels? Have they got water meters? Have they not? How many water plants do they schedule? I mean, you know,
This is about us today.
So councillors, there is a whole lot of financial information that will give you a picture of what the other councils look like. Councils are also going through exactly the same process around the country at this point in time, given the time frames we've got for the water services. We're not going to speculate on their decisions what would be appropriate to. So we can give you the next step is the financial.
So even at our next workshop, there'll be quite a lot of information to cover, also with touch on what the consultation document will look like, what we're going to be asking our communities, and what our supporting, supporting consultation documents like as well. But I guess just in closing, I guess it's really important to understand that the state of the college isn't. That's not what we're looking at. There is going to be a change. There is a change in central government. We have to respond to that and react to that. And obviously that's going to require exploring what those options are and just accepting obviously that there's costs associated with that as well. And then,
It's not the status quo, but a CCO is still like DGLT or the airport or whatever, it's in our environment, looking after our assets.
well, there's various CCO models. I mean, when we talk about, when we looked at option one, for example, when we said, right, an enhanced BAU type scenario, then that would be, you know, we would have to ensure there's a governance model. If you then went to a total PCO, then that would be, I don't believe it's elected members
No.
will be around that because that's not allowed. So it would be, you know, independent CE, independent directors.
I did want one other question.
So-
You so quickly rejected the consumer trust model. That was, you talked about not being able to borrow. Utilities have no issues in borrowing ever. It's a license to print money, we know that. So I just, you know, that sort of struck me as interesting that you rejected that.
That's a really good question, and that's something that we can probably elaborate a bit more on next time we sit down.
So that's actually a nice segue into what I was going to say as we wrap this up. If we have as much information shared collectively before the next workshop, it would be helpful to put whatever questions you've got, and if we could have them forwarded through to the team ahead of time. No problem with having questions on the day, but if they're ahead of time, then it provides an opportunity to provide a more detailed and reasoned answer rather than one you having to dig into information, because there is so much information to dig through to answer questions. So the thing is, if we're going to go, we are going out for consultation, we need to be able to understand as best we can what the options are, pros and cons.
Without a biased view.
Well, if I'm brutally honest, I've heard some biased views here today.
But I'm not in consultation. I'm
I
simply
know,
speaking.
but that's okay, and we need to keep an open mind. Not rule anything in or anything out.
Consultation would be separate to an annual plan.
So we have to do a water services delivery plan, and that's what we're consulting on.
That's what
Who did the questions go to, Kevin?
You can send them to me. if you
Yeah,
wish.
can.
Yeah, and then I can.
Yeah.
Thanks. Councillor.
Yeah. Are there any other questions or comments?
Just from me, I feel like we're just being told what to do by central government all the time, but we need some assurances from them as well. And we keep thinking we haven't got a voice, but if we're going to be collectively looking after this, potentially other councils, we have got a much bigger voice than we think. We need to go back to central government for some assurances that all this time, money and effort is going to be worth it. We've got to start somewhere. We can't just throw our hands up in the air and go, oh, well, they're telling us what to do. How about we tell them what to do?
And just with the chair, in response to that, I hear what you're saying, but you know, we've got quite a good track record here in total with the water reforms and submissions from council, direct to government, as well as obviously an opportunity to speak to central government. And we shared earlier today, hey, we're submitting on Bill 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I really feel like they need to understand our perspective a little better. We're actually the experts in the room, so to speak.
Right. Any closing words, Tony, Joe?
No, but just
Me?
this conversation will also come up in the annual plan too,
Oh,
because there's a conversation.
Danny.
That's Danny.
Danny's online. Danny, comment from you?
It was a bit of terror, it's where we were expected to be, and we just need to keep going. Just remind ourselves, you know, we've had local government, NZ and everybody else lobbying on behalf in terms of there's not enough time, not enough resources, and putting pressure on organisations, and the government doesn't care. And I don't want to be a council that says, oh, we're just going to stop doing it because we don't like you. That's a bit risky for me. And I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but I'm just paraphrasing. I don't, you know, our staff, they've got obligations as well. I don't want to put more pressure on them as well. So I get the frustration, you know, we're all frustrated, but we just need to keep doing this process. And
hopefully we will get some value out of all the extra work our poor team's been doing. Even if we go with our whatever option that we land on, I think. So not particularly helpful, but yeah, that's my position.
Thank you.
Can you share the presentation? You can share the presentation.
So we'll close it there. I just want to finish off with acknowledging again the enormous amount of work that Julie said to the CEO, Tony, Joe, Sarah, and others are having to do over and above their day jobs just to keep up with what is a very fast moving flow. Flow. Right. Thank you.
Thank you.